on December 31st, 2015, there happened to be a lady who had saved 1,000 naira every day in her piggy bank, her physical piggy bank, through the entire year. For context, 1,000 naira is about $2.50. And so she had saved it every day for 365 days. And then she finally broke the box and she put it on Twitter, and the tweet went viral. And my co-founder, Joshua, kind of just brought the tweet to our group chat and said, guys, I think we can make a digital version of this. And, we started debating it back and forth. And 2 weeks after, we had an MVP, and then we were just like ready to go.
Hi, I'm Dana Yao, your host on the Emerging Markets Tech Startups podcast. While traveling to over 90 countries, I was inspired by the entrepreneurial spirit across startup communities in Africa, Latin America, Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. On the show, we bring you stories from entrepreneurs, startup ecosystem innovators, and investors. We discuss what makes these markets culturally and historically unique, local trends, local challenges consumers and founders face, and the opportunities. Let's get started. We're so excited to have Odun on the show, who is one of the co-founders of PiggyVest, a savings investment company based out of Nigeria. And I'll let Odun sort of intro herself and what PiggyVest does.
Hi, everyone. My name is Odun. I'm co-founder and COO of PiggyVest. And PiggyVest is a micro savings and micro investment fintech company out of Lagos, Nigeria. So what we essentially do is we allow young Nigerians to put aside little amounts of money daily, weekly, or monthly towards the savings target. So you can think of it like Digits or Capital or one of the other fintech companies here in the US, but more suited to the Nigerian market. It's so scaled down that users are allowed to save 100 naira every day, just as low as 100 naira.
How much is
100 naira? It's about, I think, 20 cents. So we can do 20 cents in a day. You can do $1 a week. And you can do just about any amount that you're comfortable with, put it aside. And then we also pay interests on those savings. And the interests that we pay are comparatively higher than what, say, a traditional bank would pay you. On the micro investment side, we also offer inclusive, accessible, and affordable investments to young people, where people can invest with as low as $10 and get averagely the same rate that people who are investing 2 million naira, I suppose $2,000 are getting. So the idea is to kind of herd young Nigerians, especially millennials and Gen Z, towards financial freedom in ways that the traditional sector is not really giving us right now.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue. Why is this so innovative? Because people in the US are hearing, they're like, oh, well, I had a bank account at Chase Bank. So why, particularly in Nigeria, was this so welcomed? What was the problem before and the status quo before?
So we started in 2016, and a very interesting background to note about Nigeria in 2016 was we had 22 traditional banks, and the average young Nigerian had about 2, 3 average, like on average, traditional bank accounts, right? We all had ATM cards, we all have internet banking, but somehow people were still trying to use actual wooden boxes to save, right? So we thought that was very interesting, right? That,
Why?
despite having that, and the reasons I have like very many, but I'll just narrow on some. First, if you use a Nigerian bank account, it comes with charges, account maintenance charges, card maintenance charges, stamp duty charges, SMS charges. So if they send you an alert, they charge you. If you use your ATM card, they charge you. If you leave the money just in your account, they charge you for maintaining that account. And so that means that if you put 1,000 naira on January 1st, if you come back on January 31st, you will not meet 1,000 naira. For people who don't earn enough compared to their expenses, that means that they are losing money and not at all saving. So that represented a gap. The second thing is that because of the profit model of a lot of the banks, they're positioned to encourage you to spend rather than saving. So if you open a bank account, you have your ATM card, you have your internet banking, things that are designated to help you move money around as opposed to keeping it in one place. So we came in and we offered this alternative platform where we'll take a little at a time from your bank account according to your instructions, but you don't just have access to it despite it being your money. in 2016, when we started, the idea was very simple. You put money here for 3 months, and then you have access to it for free once in 3 months. Outside of that, we will charge you an early withdrawal fee. And the idea behind it was to kind of modify behavior, so people got used to allowing their money to grow for 3 months at a time before touching it.
We take it for granted in the US of not having to, let's say, pay for a savings account. But I know everywhere else in the world, a big reason why, like you said, they didn't put money into banks was how much fees they charged them, to the point where people were stuffing money, like you said, in a wooden box under the mattress.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys, just by solving these fundamental problems in reducing the costs, has opened up the access so significantly. And you're hearing this across the board in emerging markets. Have you heard of Nubank?
Yeah, I have heard of Nubank. Yes, I love what they're doing.
So, similar concept in the CEO when he first founded it. He was like, the banks here are so terrible in just charging these corruptive fees that we only had to be slightly better to then hit the mass market of people who have the money. It could be saving like 20 cents a day. But when you accumulate that over time across how many people, hundreds of millions of people, it has led them to do really well. And I see that's going to be going to be the case for PiggyVest. You gave us a glimpse into how PiggyVest started. So how many users is it at today, and what do you think is the potential hit in terms of adoption?
So as of today, PiggyVest is at almost 2.2 million users. And we think that we're just scratching the surface of where it could go, just in Nigeria, right? Clearly, there's like there's a Pan-African expansion potential there. And there's even expansion potential into other emerging markets based on the need. But just in Nigeria, we're at 2.2 million. And we think that with the right strategy and with the right push behind the product, we could crack 10 million users in Nigeria very quickly.
Yeah. And how big is the Nigerian population, for those who don't know?
Well, Nigeria has about 200 million people. And obviously, not all of those people will use like a digital banking service, but still a sizable number of people will.
Folks in this ecosystem in Silicon Valley don't realize how big these markets are, how populated they are, and not even just the current population, but I know the Nigerian population's growth rate is huge. You guys are having a lot of babies. So that is the huge potential. On top of that, within the population, as more people move into the middle class, something like this is even more important to them as a place to store their money. You were telling me before we started about the founding story of PiggyVest. So can you share with the audience?
So I think that one of like the greatest things about how PiggyVest started was that we got the idea from someone who was a potential user. So on December 31st, 2015, there happened to be a lady who had saved 1,000 naira every day in her piggy bank, her physical piggy bank, through the entire year. For context, 1,000 naira is about $2.50. And so she had saved it every day for 365 days. And then she finally broke the box and she put it on Twitter, and the tweet went viral. And my co-founder, Joshua, kind of just brought the tweet to our group chat and said, guys, I think we can make a digital version of this. And, we started debating it back and forth.
Let's upgrade her.
And 2 weeks after, we had an MVP, and then we were just like ready to go.
That is so impressive. When people are doing nothing on New Year's Eve, you and your team are working on New Year's and throughout the beginning of the year to develop an MVP. What were you guys particularly passionate about this problem, or what was it that led your team to move so fast?
So we always move so very fast.
The Nigerian way, hustle or die.
We're very passionate about the market segment. Before that, we had spent 3 years working on different products for this market segment, for young people, for millennials, and we were very determined to crack it. And this presented a very unique opportunity. Like Nigerians love their money, they protect their money. So this felt like a really nice entry point. So we moved as quickly as we could.
That is so fascinating. That's a good segue to our the second part. Let's talk about Nigeria as a market. So what are the millennials like? Why are people obsessed with money? Why do people know Nigeria as like the hustle nation?
I, Nigerian millennials are pretty much the same millennials as everywhere else. I think the difference,
They're very
yeah,
stylish.
I
I've
like
seen
that.
a
I
lot of the
agree.
music.
We watch TV much like everyone else. We use Twitter much like everyone else. And I think that the difference would be the environment that we grew up in and, just kind of like the differences and I would say the lack. So Nigeria, as many people might know, is plagued by a lack of infrastructure and economic problems. And that might be why we are also known as like the hustle nation. Things aren't as easy, for instance, and this is why PiggyVest was very useful to people. For instance, if you wanted to like rent a place in the US, you find a nice place, you get your credit checked, and you can pay first and last month's rent, and you can move in and be well on your way. If you wanted to get a car, you have a payment plan, and things in Nigeria that it doesn't work that way. If you want to buy a car, you have to carry the entire amount, right? So if you wanted to buy a car,
Oh,
yeah,
you have to pay
exactly,
all of it up
upfront,
front?
the entire thing, right? If you want to rent a house, you have to pay a year in advance, sometimes 2 years. And so those things mean that like people definitely have to save up. So if you contrast like all of those payments that you have to make, well, we don't have anything like student loans here. You cannot attend school without paying like your full school fees. So those things are like particularly important to the average Nigerian. So we are all constantly thinking about money, constantly thinking about saving up, and constantly trying to make more. That means that like when you compare our expenses to what we earn, then you start to understand why it's very important for the average Nigerian to protect their money and grow it, which means that platforms like ours are very welcome, offering better interest rates than the banks, just as much security and slightly a bit more discipline, so you are actually saving up for those responsibilities.
Why is it in the case people can't get credit and they have to pay a whole year's of rent? Is there not trust in the ecosystem? Are the banks not incentivized?
We don't have a credit system, so that we don't have a credit system, and we don't have proper addressing system. We don't have the social security system, so identification is a bit of a challenge. And so, yeah, we live in a very low trust system, and so that means that people who are selling things, they don't know who you are. No one is tied down to any address when they move. You can just up and pack your things and get another house when you want without updating any portals. And so that means that like everyone is moving around protecting their own interests very, very keenly.
And another thing that stuck out when I was speaking to Kola, who is the founder of Ventures Platform, who introduced us and is an investor of PiggyVest, is that right? He had mentioned,
Yeah, oh yeah, Kola is our investor. He's one of the best investors in the
oh,
ecosystem, actually.
he's like the spokesperson for the startup ecosystem there. He had talked about a lot of millennials, what differentiates them from folks here is everyone has like 5 side hustles. Is that true? Or
That is true, yes. I'll tell you a funny story.
what are some of those side hustles?
It can be anything, right? When I graduated in 2013 and we started working on our startup, I know how to write. So on this, as we're building this startup called Push CV at the time in 2014, we're building a startup before that one failed, and then we started building Push CV. But on the side, I took a job as a tech journalist, and so I wrote for like all of the blogs in Nigeria at the time. I've had a job with all of them at one point in time or the other, right? You do consulting gigs, and you have to kind of balance it out so your income kind of matches your needs. So some people who work full-time jobs have Instagram shops where they sell things that people want. So you have lots of entrepreneurship going on, actually.
And that's what we had identified in last episode why Nigeria is one of the best places to have startup growth because the mindset from the beginning, because like you mentioned, of the constraints, leads to this entrepreneurship thought that's in the blood, in how you guys live every day, moving fast, and this hustle culture. So, not surprised. And because you guys are solving such an important problem, have you been heavily collaborating with the banks who are like, oh my God, they're finding so much success. We want to partner with them?
I don't think, we've been collaborating, perhaps not heavily, and not as much as we probably should be. But that's because both sides of the divide still kind of find enough agreement points. And so the entire fintech bank relationship is still being treated for the most part like an antagonistic one instead of like a collaborative one. But I think that maybe we'll find some common ground soon.
They're all sleeping, and then one day they're gonna wake up. You guys took their like entire market share, and then
In Nigeria, I don't think that that will happen. I think that the eventual like conclusion of this is that we actually all collaborate. It's just taking a while.
so hopefully they realize that. But like you said, I know even here, we have the banks really antagonistic around innovation on cryptocurrency. They're the ones that denounce it because they realize if they give in to that, they're going to lose their own power. So there is probably some sense of threat. But we'll see how this plays out. Let's talk a bit more about PiggyVest's growth strategy. So you guys have hit 2.2 million people. How did you get there? Tell us about your first customers, if there's any funny stories there, and then we'll go into strategies.
I mean, I don't know if it's funny. I think it's just like really, really interesting that one of our first customers was actually a person who was distributing and selling the actual physical boxes on Twitter, right? So he used to sell those boxes.
The piggy bank boxes?
My co-founder yeah, he used to sell piggy banks. And then we went and told him, hey, here's a platform that we built called Piggy Bank. Try it out. And so he was one of our first users.
So did he not feel threatened that if people used the digital version, he would lose money?
Much like everyone else, his piggy bank business was just like a side hustle.
Other customers, were they of the similar archetype? Were they all millennials? What was the segmentation like?
Well, initially it was like mostly millennials, like all millennials, in fact. But now the customer spread has kind of like gone all out. There's different kinds of people on the platform. And while millennials are still a majority, they're only a slight majority.
Wow. So you're saying like older people on the platform too?
Older people are using the platform. Like we have like university lecturers, like old guys.
My dad.
Yeah. But I used to use it very well, and you have people who have these conversations with them. I've been I'm privileged to speak to like users' grandparents who they were trying to onboard onto the platform, and I think that like it's really interesting to bridge that like generational divide with this particular product. So if you have like an older person, say in their 60s, who uses a smartphone, their kids are probably always trying to get them onto the platform. And sometimes I'm happy to like speak to them personally to help them cross like the bridges to start using the platform.
Wow, you can get a personal phone call from Odun. But what is their main concern? Is it that they can't see their physical money? Because I know in emerging markets, it's very cash-based.
Yeah, and like we're digital, so it's like we don't have bank branches. And so they're like, so, who do I go and meet? I'm like, no worries. We have an office. We just don't have branches and things. So the conversation usually around like the trust factor. How can I be sure that I can trust you? How can I be sure that just because of the environment, right? It's always understandable. So, it's kind of our responsibility to help them get over that barrier and reassure them that we're here, here for a long time, not going anywhere with your funds and things like that.
What's been the strategy there? Is it just repetition, or have you guys actually done certain things to overcome this trust barrier?
Well, the first thing is to like emphasize and re-emphasize on your regulatory standing. That typically helps. But for the most part, we have relied on peer-to-peer recommendation and a robust referral system. So in the initial stages of PiggyVest, like in 2016, when we started, at the end of that year, we saved 21 million naira, which is about $60,000. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part was that on December 31st, 2016, as soon as everybody was able to withdraw after that first saving cycle, the people who use social media went straight to social media to talk about their experience, right? And it was largely positive. So that kind of generated this effect where someone's like, oh, I saved X amount on PiggyVest, and I have now withdrawn. My Christmas is about to be lit. The New Year is about to be lit. And everyone's asking, what is PiggyVest? How do I sign up? And things like that. And so the questions that were coming were, oh, I'm interested now that this person that I know has used it. And, starting a company, we're engineers, we're not like finance people. what became obvious was, not one, we don't have a lot of resources. Two, not enough people were willing to back a challenger fintech at that time. So we did not have like money for traditional marketing and pushing like lots of ads. And seeing this, we got to work immediately. People are responding to people that they know talking about this. How can we harness that? Right. So what we did was, the little marketing budget we had, we put behind our users and we bet on them. That we believe that people are more likely to use this product when they are told about it by people that they trust. And so that led us to building a referral system where you, as a user, you love the platform, you've used it, here's your unique link. Bring on a person who becomes an active user, and the entire amount for converting that person goes to you. Like, what is our customer acquisition cost? So we pay our users about $3 to bring on another active user, not just another user. And that has worked for the past 5 years.
Wow. That is ripping a page out of how, if you know the story of PayPal, they were also paying,
Yeah.
paying people $5.
Yeah, I know the story of PayPal. It was interesting to
Wow,
read.
that is fascinating. So referral systems never get old. I feel like people is like, oh, that's an old tactic or that's expensive. But for you guys, are you still doing this today? Did you decrease the cost?
We vary the cost based on seasons, depends on what's going on. For Valentine's, we can increase it, just like to show love. For back to school, you can change it. So we change it based on different campaigns, but it's largely on average the same cost. But what we do is kind of keep the experience fresh within the platform. So there's always like features being changed, features being upgraded. That way it feels like there's always a new thing to talk about.
And is this your guys' key growth strategy still to this day? Or have you guys done other
Yeah.
creative stuff?
So I really like big believers in, if you create like really good experiences for people, they will not stop talking about it. So you have people who've used the platform since 2016, still talking about the platform today, right? So there, as today, I retweeted a tweet that says, "I think PiggyVest is one of the best things that ever happened to
Changed
me."
my life.
This person has been on the platform for quite a while, right? And so those kind of things, just we continue, as long as these people who are using the platform are happy. We believe that the power of the network effect like trumps quite a bit of like an extensive like marketing budget. Now, while that may be true, and that is true, we also know that once we're ready to kind of make a big blowout, there might be times when we'll lean into traditional marketing, but I don't think that would ever stop the referral system.
I mean, you know, company's good when it's basically grown through a referral system, even if it's paid. People are willing to tell other people because if it's a bad product, even if someone paid me $100, I would not risk my reputation.
Exactly. And so, yeah.
So that's huge. Have you guys thought about influencers? I know there's a good chunk of influencers in Nigeria.
So we thought about influencers, and we have tried out influencers, but people actually respond more to organic like tweets that like represent real experiences. And if there's one thing about millennials, they can smell an ad a mile away. They can just like sniff it out.
That's true, but all of us are suckers to responding to it. Be like, yeah, we love that shirt in 10 different colors.
Yeah, that they know it's an ad, so we try as much as possible to give organic experiences. Monthly, we would interview a random user who would talk about their experiences, and people respond more to that than say someone with a lot of influence telling them to use PiggyVest. And one of the other things that we've noticed is that if you give people like a great experience, influencer or not, they talk about the product, right? One random day we woke up and one of the musicians in Nigeria was talking about PiggyVest just randomly, completely unpaid, completely unprovoked. And it was really interesting to just kind of see that. Yeah.
Was
Sorry, I
she
didn't hear you.
he really famous or was like an everyday person?
Yeah, he's really famous, like one of like the big ones. And it was just like how he'd been using the platform, and we had no idea that they were using the platform. In 2016, an addition to the push of everyone talking about the experiences was a radio personality who was an early adopter, and we didn't even know. Also going to Twitter to talk about like, I used this platform for the past 1 year. I just took my money out, it had grown and things like that. It was So that kind of showed us that like you want to use influencers, but you want to use them responsibly. And regardless of who they are, people tend to talk about like platforms and experiences that they have and that they use that are really great.
So it sounds like you guys invest a lot into making the product just a great experience, knowing that that is going to speak for itself.
That's the entire day-to-day, yes.
It's the strategy. Got it. Put that into your pockets, startup founders. Build a good product. Always start with that. These stories you're telling me, it almost sounds like a cult following now, that people are obsessed with this product. Why? What about the product? What is these key experiences that they're talking about?
One of our superpowers would be the fact that over the past 5 years, an important part of the journey has been keeping the brand very human and never ever robotic, right? And we invest, like I said, we invest a bit into like the experience. We also invest a lot into like the perception that the brand gives to the users, right? What we saw from like a lot of financial institutions at the time was that they tended to talk like at their users, not to them, right? So PiggyVest as a brand continues to have conversations with its users. All the entire product roadmap is informed by user behavior and user conversation and user asks, right? And so we ask them all the time, what would you like to see? And then, we modify it, we build it, and then we roll it out. And so everyone on PiggyVest feels like a really large community, right? So on Twitter, for instance, if someone's had a bad experience, what you notice is that once the person is tweeting about it, there's other PiggyVest users under that tweet trying to help the person find a solution. And I think that's, yeah, I don't think that there's bigger motivation than that to continue to create like the best experience. There's people saying, oh, I had the problem and they solved it in 5 minutes. Please send them a DM, right? It's really important that, and the reason that they do that is because every time they have a problem, the customer success people are committed to chatting with them as individual people, no like canned responses. And we try to talk to them like, hi Diana, what can I do for you today? Have you tried this? Did you try it? Okay, hold on, I'll go find a solution. Or I don't know this right now, but I can ask my manager, and things like that. So we don't pretend to always have all of the answers. And we tell them, oh, we'll figure this out, and then we do. And so the human face of the brand, and then the fact that they can interact with the founders on Twitter just as well is very, I think, very important to the experience that the user like gets on the platform. Now, the features are great, and they're very tailored to the average low to middle income earners needs. And I also think that that contributes as well.
There's so much to unpack there. One takeaway, but shouldn't be a surprise, always go back to servicing the user and putting them first. I mean, people talk about this all the time, but there's so few companies that do it, especially the bigger they grow. So I'd be really interested to talk to you like 2 years from now to say like, you guys have scaled to, 10 million. Are you still able to keep the amount of service? So is this you guys hiring a lot of customer service agents? What is that? How do you guys scale while still providing that same level of support?
What we try to do also within the app, we do have a large customer service team, and they're all like individually trained for this specific purpose. But the other thing that we try to do is build self-correction and self-help into the platform. So if a transaction goes wrong, you can go to a section of the app and correct it by yourself, right? And so it makes like the user feel like, this is built for them, this is built for their use. And I think that's very important. And so we try not to rely on humans too much, except when necessary. But regardless of that, I think the customer service team remains the nerve center of the company and will probably grow quite a bit.
Especially in markets where they expect physical things, right? They don't want to talk to a robot.
Yeah.
They are used to going in person, even if it takes more time.
Yeah.
It's not about efficiency sometimes. It's about trust.
You know what? I don't think there's anything more correct. That's actually it. It's really about the trust. It's less about the efficiency for the most part. Right now, answering their question fast is really good, and it probably sets the tone for the next time they have a problem. But for that first time, it's about how can I come to trust you, and how do you fix this?
So that's a key thing you guys got right, and it doesn't always have to do with the product, but the company's values and cultures and how they interact with the users. I want to use a product, but I can't. It's not available here. So walk me through what is the
We're
typical.
coming, don't worry.
Oh, okay. What is the typical use case like on a day-to-day basis? What are people doing on the app?
People are warehousing funds. People are saving for like back to school fees. People are saving to buy the latest iPhone. Um, People are saving just to have to like change it to dollars, just to have dollar savings. Um, there's there's something I think for everybody, and like there's like 6 different wallets on the app, and people utilize it based on their
Why do
needs,
they need six
right?
different wallets? How are they different?
So it's really like each wallet is kind of like a unique use case. And so, for instance, I make use of, for the most part, 2 wallets out of the 6, right? Because so there's the piggy bank itself, which is the one where you save for a stretch of 90 days before you can withdraw, right? So people who use that are usually like warehousing for a big event like rent, school fees, or something, right? And then there's the safe lock. The safe lock feature it works like government treasury bills, where you lock your funds for a particular period and interests are offered to you upfront and the capital comes at maturity. That's usually for people who just want to lock down funds for a specific period. It might be that they don't want to spend it. It might be that they just want to earn interest on a particular amount. Then we have the target savings wallet, which is very flexible to save towards like particular events. Saving towards my birthday, I'm saving towards a vacation, I'm saving towards a new bag, I'm saving towards my Nike shoes. And then you can set the frequency, daily, weekly, monthly, and you can do it alone or you can do it with a group. So that also improves like camaraderie. So you have a group of people who are saving towards the new year, for instance, or a group of people who are saving towards Easter vacation and things like
How
that.
does that one work?
And
The
then,
community one. I'm really curious. Is it just me committing with
yeah,
my friends? We're all going to save $5, but it's not pulling together into one.
no, it's not pulling together into one. At the end of the saving period, each of you gets what you've saved. But it just like keeps you all honest and on your toes so that you make sure that everyone is saving what they said they'll save. Oh no, of course. And then we have something called the flex dollar, which is basically just people like converting some of their naira into like US dollars and just saving it and earning some interest. That's the people who use that are more like business people. I find use that because they're like buying things from like abroad and shipping in things and stuff like that. And then the last one is the flex naira, which is basically just flexible naira for people who are just casual savers. And so in between those 6 like different features, you find like 1 or 2 that work for you, and then you create your own use case out of that. And so the platform, while being very disciplined, I think also it helps people be flexible with what they need from it.
I've never heard saving sound so fun. When I think about saving, I think just putting it into my savings account and not having like 6 different choices, which is so interesting. So, yes, please come to the US because this definitely sounds like a new market that's yet to penetrate even here. And a big part of the savings that I don't know if you mentioned is that they get the interest, right? Is that why they're incentivized, or for them it's just enough to have a space to save somewhere without earning interest?
I think that like there's a variation on why people do that. Some people do it for the interest, and some people do love the interest. But we definitely have people who have the interest off and are just using the platform.
Wow, that's interesting. Because why don't they just put it under the mattress?
I think it's just really about the experience, right? And also, there's kind of some fear of missing out. People are constantly talking about it, thankfully, and so everyone is trying to get on it, which is like really great. And then some people are just using it so they can see their money like move around without physical cash, because there's also security worries as well.
Wow. And what's the business model for you guys?
We operate an asset under management model, so we don't charge people for saving, but we do pool the funds and invest them in risk-free instruments, take a spread, and pass on the rest to the users.
Got it. Okay, that's pretty typical of any bank, right? Using the deposits to then invest, and then on this product side, there sounds to be so much innovation. How does your product team run to come up with these ideas, enable these ideas, make sure they stay true to the users?
Well, the fact that the roadmap is already user generated means that the end-to-end process, right? First of all, we take feedback from our users very seriously, and we take it via different channels: Twitter, Instagram, the app itself, email. There's constantly like feedback coming in. And so the more we hear about something, the more like we're like incentivized to look into it, right? For instance, I'll give you an example. In 2017, we've been doing savings for about a year and a half, and users started to like ask us, so what next? I've saved on your platform, I have a bulk sum, now I have to move it out to invest. Why? And so it became very clear to us that, okay, so you need to incorporate an element of micro investments, right? And so we did. So if within the platform, outside of those 6 wallets, there's a micro investment side that functions like an investment marketplace, right? So that's kind of how we build out the platform. What do users want, right? Sometimes we come up with ideas and we test them and see if like they work. Like the Flex Dollar was one of those. But a lot of the time it is inbound from people asking, so when is PiggyVest going to launch this? So when is PiggyVest going to launch this? And those things we take very seriously. And because the roadmap is already like informed by these asks, it's very hard for the end to end not to be really just about the user and less about us or what we feel.
One thing you didn't mention why there's such a cult following or love of this brand is because they feel heard. When you incorporate these ideas from what they're tweeting, what they're giving, what they're asking, and challenge you guys on, instead of backing away from it or pretending like you don't hear it, you guys actually implement into the product. So that's probably another reason why people love the experience, because they feel like, oh, well, they're building what I told them to build.
We want to feel like they're part. We want them to feel like they're part of the building process, right? The app is primarily for the users, and so it's really important to us that they feel like we're intentional about listening to them and intentional about incorporating this feedback into the platform as we grow.
Yeah. And so many companies, whether it's here in Silicon Valley or in emerging markets, always ask, how do I innovate? How do I stay on top of things? Listen to your users. Start there, because they can provide a ton of great areas of problems that need to be solved, or they can be the ones that come up with the ideas. I always joke, at our company, a lot of the times we look for latent demand. We look for how users are sort of hacking our current products to create another use case to then build on that. So, for example, there's a company in Colombia called Rappi, and they're a delivery service like the Postmates. They're a bit of everything now, but they first started off doing alcohol delivery. That was the initial idea of. And then one day, one of the co-founders was like, why don't we just put another box right under that says other? When they opened that up, people were asking for deliveries of cookies, of money from an ATM. And that was what opened up their market, when they gave people the creative freedom to use the product as how they wanted to.
That's very interesting. And I think, yeah, that actually sounds like it really like you just like I think if you find more ways to listen to your users, you get ideas that you yourself couldn't have thought of and that are like great for the product.
Last section question. We've talked a lot about where PiggyVest came from, where it is today. What about the future? 5 years from now, do you guys have a vision of what you want to be taking on that today just seems like so hard?
Well, I mean, the goal for us is to become like a digital financial warehouse where people manage their funds from. And we're working towards democratizing access to all financial services. So we started with savings, started with we've moved on to micro investments. And so we will be experimenting very soon with other aspects of financial services, um, insurance, pensions, lending, probably, and just like the goal would be how can we break all of these services down in ways that our users find them accessible and welcoming. How do we help insurance companies, for instance, to stop collecting bulk sums and start collecting like these premiums monthly or weekly, you know, so that people, like in Nigeria, for instance, 99% of the country is completely uninsured, like no form of insurance. And
Whoa.
I think that that's a big gap, right? And so the problem is usually like, again, we live in a low trust environment and we're building this community of people who we already know their habits. How can we help their habits translate into trust to these insurance companies and make sure that they kind of get access to these services? So that's what we will be looking to tackle. And I think it's a really big deal for Nigeria and essentially for the African continent, really, because for the most part, pensions and all of these financial services that are not like savings and investment are largely ignored.
That is so bold. I mean, when you say tackling the insurance space, that in itself is such a complex vertical. And like you said, the fact that 99% of Nigerians don't have insurance, one, that's a huge space to play in, but two, a really complex space. And to hear your guys' aspirations toward that is really, really inspiring. So, Odun, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. I will probably speak for everyone that you've gotten folks so excited about PiggyVest, but also the future of Nigeria. To have founding teams like yours really set the vision. To circle back, that lack of infrastructure is a challenge, and for you guys to come in to tackle that one problem by problem, because it's very easy to get overwhelmed by the lack instead of seeing it as opportunities. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I was happy to be here.
Hey guys, you just heard from Odun, the co-founder of PiggyVest, one of the fastest growing fintech companies out of Africa. If she got you interested in the Nigerian startup ecosystem and you want to learn more, make sure to visit our episode on Nigeria's startup ecosystem with Kola Aina, who talks about other hot startups such as Paystack, which actually got acquired by Stripe late last year for $200 million. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and share this episode with friends who are interested in the African startup ecosystem. Till next time.